Tiana's Bayou adventure has finally opened at Walt Disney World Resort at the Magic Kingdom. Meanwhile, a person in the know has explained why Tiana's Bayou adventure may never work properly. This is while guests are being evacuated from the ride as emergency sirens go off and scary voices tell people that this is not a drill. Let's talk about Tiana's Bayou adventure on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is theme park guru, Mr. VashSky. Vash, we've got a lot to talk about today. Are you ready?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely am to talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Come on, Jonas. I'm always ready.
Let's talk about the good, first of all. This story out of WDWNT, otherwise known as Walt Disney World News Today. Annual park reservations fully booked for Tiana's Bayou Adventure opening weekend. This by Shannon Ace. I just want to go here for this specific screenshot here. Look at that. Park reservations were open at the time. And right here, 28th, 29th, and 30th, they're all completely booked. The ride opens today as of the recording. So if something happens on this ride today, we're either going to have to re-record or release this as is. But things are not going well on Tiana's Bayou Adventure here before the ride is opened. First of all, this tweet from Blizzard Archive, Ice Gator. We're going to play this for you. This is a cast member. This looks to be the shrunken scene.
May I have your attention, please? There has been an emergency reported in the building. Please evacuate the building by the nearest exit. Do not use the elevators.
As you can see here, people are having to bring a key to unlock the lap bars in order for people to get off of this ride. This is lights on. This is an in-show exit with lights on. Fire alarms blaring, and not just the usual in-show warnings that would be like Louis the alligator playfully telling you that your Bayou adventure journey is stopped or something like that. This is the emergency siren. So we don't know what's going on. I'm assuming this is not a drill because they don't do all of this in that instance. And we also know that the water was drained the morning of the 27th before this ride open. So there was a lot going on here. Now, this is not necessarily going to be the focus of this video, just to know that they are still having problems pretty close to opening day here. We haven't heard of anything this morning, the morning of the 28th. So it could be a miracle that the many maintenance tickets that needed to be resolved suddenly got resolved.
Well, it actually looks like we have an update on this story here from Laughing Place. As you can see on your screen right now, Tiana's is down and the queue is being emptied. This was at 10 a.m. my time, but I think it was 1 p.m. Eastern. Looks like it lasted a little bit throughout the day, but the curse of the Brairs comes back again to haunt this attraction on its opening day. Jonas, did you think that this was going to come down like this?
I'm going to say that I thought that it was going to happen. There was part of me that was just kind of hoping maybe they're going to squeak by, maybe that this is all like Imagineering coming together and they were going to hand this over to operations and it was going to be boom, we got this whole thing figured out. But no, that was a hopeful part of me, not the part of me that is realistic and says that there's actually a history of this with the recent Walt Disney Company. Not going to point to Moana's Journey of Water, whatever the actual name of that is, or Runaway Railway, or any of the other attractions that have frequent downtime, frequent operational issues. And animatronics are supposed to be the thing that sets this company apart at this point. And right now, Epic Universe is, we're going to stay away from Dark Universe over there. It's that shadowy place. We're not going to touch it in this video, but here we are. Let's get back on this. There's a clip that we often play from the opening of Splash Mountain. Here, I'll just give it to you anyways.
Why, you can't open a Splash Mountain when that mountain ain't got no water.
No water.
No water. No water.
That was right before they turned the water on for the first rides of Splash Mountain. Obviously, that's also, it sounds like the voice of Jess Harnell, wonderful voice actor here. Now, we have paid attention on Twitter, and Vash, we've seen tweets from someone who should know Splash Mountain pretty well that might have a theory on what's going on here in this ride. Go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. So Old Pappy on Twitter here, WF Dave Ensign, was very opinionated and like you said, Jonas, had maybe a theory as to what was going on here. So the Splash Mountain building is, and always has been, a waterlogged, mildewed, mold-ridden place. There's no way electromechanical animatronic figures can survive there. No way. Who on earth thought this was a good idea? And then expletive.
Yep. Okay, can I ask you 2 questions here? Who
Please.
is Dave Ensign or Ensign, and why is the electromechanical animatronic figures different than Splash Mountain?
Right. So Dave Ensign, his Twitter is filled with certain designs that he's been either currently working on or previous designs that he worked on in the past. And so it looks like, to me at least, he seems to be very knowledgeable on animatronics specifically. And when it comes to Splash Mountain, it seems like he's commenting from experience. And we'll get into kind of why we think that is, well, in the comments that we'll read from him here. When it comes to the animatronic figures, so there's kind of 2 types of animatronic figures. There's pneumatic actuation and there's electromechanical animated figures, as is being described by old Pappy here. And pneumatic actuation, you're usually looking to use a fluid or like a hydraulic fluid in order to make those pneumatics actually work. And depending on how much pressure you actually place into a certain system or function, that's where you get that movement. Whereas electromechanical animated figures or electronic actuation or electronic servos and motors, well, obviously they would work like a big sized kind of electromechanical toy almost. Now, we have heard that maybe our esteemed friend Culture Casino has stated that maybe those electronic servos or electric motors might be maybe a little bit too small for the amount of motion that they actually want from these figures and how big they actually are. But old Pappy here, he's actually bringing up the fact that moisture might be the concern, which I think also Culture brought up.
Yes, and we know here that those old pneumatic actuators, probably hydraulic oil inside of them in order to move it, they're sturdier and they're meant to function in a way that for continuous usage, as opposed to these electromechanical ones that we're hearing that there's a trigger at the start of the scene that goes off that starts the scene from scratch every time someone goes through. So with the hydraulic ones, they were in constant motion, as we understand it.
Yes, they had loops. And you can see this on Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion, or any of those classic animatronic-based attractions where you have maybe like an Omnimover or maybe like a slow-moving boat ride, Small World ride, in which you have these animatronic figures that move on a constant loop to varying timings and so forth. Ariel's Undersea Adventure is actually built like this as well. But what's different, starting with, I would say, like Frozen Ever After, for example, now you have these very technical scenes or complicated scenes in which they play out in front of you as your vehicle passes by. Now, in something like Rise of Resistance or something where you have a ride system in which you can have varying degrees of control to the millimeter, maybe that's a different story in which you can have just all kinds of control. But remember, these are basically free-floating logs in which timing and control, is not as precise. And what we're hearing is combine this with the timing issue and with the trigger issue, in which you have these electric motors that are moving and then they have to stop and then reset. That kind of hard stop versus soft stop that maybe you would have with a hydraulic pneumatic figure, that doesn't really occur with these figures.
There's also the fact that they waterlogged, mildewed, mold-ridden place, assuming that mildew and mold would get into those electromechanical figures. The idea that this is Florida. So Florida is a very humid place. It's not as dry as California. California, which gets 3 minutes of rain every year and somehow remains very beautiful. Florida is a place that humidity is part of daily life. And if you're not from Florida, if you're visiting Florida, it's a lot more, the difference when you step off the plane and you get into the Florida sun. The weather is great unless it really, really isn't. It is not the heat, it is the humidity. Should be on the state flag.
It should. And old Pappy here, well, he has comments about that as well. He says, when they built Splash Mountain in Florida, because I know little of the ride anywhere else, it's cement and water isn't in an enclosed massive building. It's very hot in there and everything rusts or is covered in black slime all the time. You'll remember, Jonas, I actually brought up the fact that, yes, it is concrete inside. And one of the reasons why that is to prevent basically the breakdown from moisture that would occur with water rides of the past, like Small World and specifically Pirates of the Caribbean. That has to be taken down every once in a while in order to get rid of that wood rot that occurs with that attraction.
If you're talking about slime on an actuator, which is something that's going to happen, I don't know how quickly it would happen. You would assume that it wouldn't happen within the first 2 weeks of even attraction being tested, but slime in actuators is a no-go here. Water, obviously you can do animatronics in the water if they are waterproof, if they are hydraulic. Jaws is a great example. The number of times that there were reports of that ride going down because there was oil in the water, which guests weren't going to get into the water, but it's a nasty look. That is a critical show element. They probably wouldn't want to do that with electric actuators. Now, in this case, there's no chance that these animatronics are not going to get wet, or at least moist.
I would absolutely agree with that assessment, because you're talking there's going to be water, potentially splashing up over certain show scenes, depending on how full the flume is at that point, or maybe somebody dips their hand in the water and splashes something. From what I understood, at least back when it was Splash Mountain, all the figures were rated to be in the elements. They were actually rated for outdoors. So this was well known within the halls of WDI, at least before all this occurred with now Tiana's Bayou Adventure. But old Pappy, he continues. He says, this black slime in Splash Mountain was because we live in Florida. Walt Disney World was built on a real swamp. It's in every water ride at Walt Disney World. Electromechanical animatronic figures hate this. I would say that's pretty accurate, as we are seeing. He goes on here. So now you ride Splash Mountain and the amazing animatronic characters don't work. Surprise! WTF is even happening at that place that I love so much. He then goes on. The one I really wanted to take note was this one right here. Look. The Splash Mountain show building. It's very damp and humid. That affects electricity actuated animatronics. For example, King Kong over at Skull Island. All electric faults out if the temp varies by 2 degrees up or down will not work inside a building. This is very interesting because I had a conversation with he was a very knowledgeable Imagineer, and he did specialize in various realms when it came to WDI, but specifically audio animatronics. And so he was telling me that, like, let's say, for example, a lot of people are like, oh, when can we change out the faces in the Frozen attraction over there in Epcot with from the projection faces that currently exist to maybe the animated figures that exist in Hong Kong or resorts that actually have this same attraction. And he was telling me, look, the precision that you require for any of these figures in order to prevent things like shudder or shake is very fine. And 2 degrees here in terms of the temperature variation to from a figure working and not working, I absolutely believe that, because the way he was describing it to me, they are very, very sensitive to any change in terms of their environment or in terms of the figures themselves. So it's not just a matter of replacing the head of a figure. That whole figure has been built from stem to stern to be a certain weight and to act a certain way. And so when you change those characteristics, and maybe don't account for those, or maybe you didn't actually build it from the ground up to do that, well, then you have a really bad time on your hands. So it's much more involved than people think. Now, potentially, WDI didn't know that.
There's something that I want to bring up here. The Lewis animatronic, which is the one that is faulting more than anything else. Obviously, the Tiana animatronic is also faulting, so this is not special to Lewis. But the Lewis animatronic in particular, there were some comments that you and I made when it was first revealed. It looked amazing, but we noted the material doesn't look quite right. And especially if the mouth doesn't move, it has the appearance of a cast member in one of those mascot suits. So I wonder just how hot it gets inside of that, what appears to be a felt costume here. So the question that I have is, will they continue to have this problem? I guess the testing point is going to be whenever they open this up at Disneyland. If they don't have this problem at Disneyland, and I don't have anybody attesting to this, maybe someone could reach out. If there are Imagineers that are very familiar with what happens with Splash Mountain out there in Disneyland, please get in touch with us. But I don't think the Disneyland ride has the same issues for Splash Mountain as the Walt Disney World version. And we would love to know at this point whether it's going to work in Disneyland, despite what's going on in Florida. We want to throw this to our commenters, though. Will you be riding Tiana's Bayou Adventure as soon as you can? Will you, since the virtual queue is already filled up, and maybe you could get Genie Plus before that goes away, will you be getting Lightning Lane Multipass in order to assure your spot on Tiana's Bayou Adventure? Or you want to take bets on whether this thing is going to be a completely different ride 1 year from now and still bragged about on the earnings call, the same way they are about some of the other broken rides that are at Walt Disney World Resort right now. Oh well. Like this video if you like this video, and stay tuned to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.